First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fox 12 Now. I am Greg Nibbler, and as always, appreciate you joining us. It is Thursday at 1:30, which means, generally speaking, we're joined by the one and only Eric G. from around the house, Northwest, right here, with some, not only a preview of this week's episode of Around the House Northwest, but also always great tips and tricks that you can use. And I want to emphasize, we're also live at our social media channels, so if you have questions, comments, you can drop those in there. But Eric, how you doing?
Good, brother. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So this topic is so relevant, I feel like right now, that you want to talk about, like safety tips, fire prevention for your house, something that everybody should really be thinking about.
Man, and it's that time of year where the heaters are turning around, and it's stuff that we forgot about all summer long, and it's really a big deal right now because we see so many fires starting that we got to get on top of this right now.
Yeah, and especially, people are trying to stay warm, turning on furnaces that maybe haven't been on for a long time, or starting up fires in their fireplace. And I guess, to start off, what are some, I guess, what's the first tip that you would have?
One of the biggest ones that's so preventable is people grabbing those space heaters and plugging them into extension cords or into power strips. And there are so many fires, especially in workplaces, right, where somebody's got it plugged in under their desk, they want a little bit of heat, and all of a sudden those power strips are not rated for that, amperage and wattage going through there. And all of a sudden you've got a fire. And there's so many times, whether it's in somebody's home office or anywhere else, that those fires are 100% easily preventable by just plugging them right into the wall and not using some kind of an extension cord.
That's a big one. I can imagine there's a lot of people out there doing that. So if it's plugged into the extension cord when it's not rated for it, but where does the fire start? Does it just like heat up that power strip, or?
It will melt that power strip down, and all of a sudden you get a short. Now you've got an electrical fire, and you're hoping now that the breaker catches it before you heat that thing up. But so many fires happen because once that plastic starts going, it's burning.
So do not plug that into an extension.
Exactly. So go right into the wall with it. They're rated for that, and you should be good to go. But that's a big one that happens about right now, and people are getting cold, especially in the mornings.
So spread the word, everybody. Make sure everyone knows about that. Like, don't do that, because that is a predictable fire that could be happening. All right, what's another good one?
The next one is, a lot of people have like forced air baseboard heat. Like there's the cadet heaters out there, which are the wall mount ones that have a fan and they blow electric heat, out of that. Or your baseboard heat along the bottom. Never have anything up against those. They're really bad.
Yeah, those things can definitely catch fire. I think I talked about it before on here. I had an apartment burn down because of that. I had a pillow fall on a baseboard heater, and the thermostat stopped working, so it just heated up all day long until it ignited it. So be careful of those.
Yeah, those are real careful. And if you've got those cadet heaters, turn the power off, take the 2 screws off, vacuum them out, because they catch a lot of lint in there since there's no filters. So annual maintenance on those is key.
Oh, sorry, the cadet heater. Yeah, I mentioned the baseboard, but I went straight to that. But yes, the cadet heater. So vacuum those things out.
Yeah, clean those things out. There was recalls on those 20 years ago. The new ones are good, but they had the overheat mechanism didn't work, so that was an issue. So just little maintenance goes a long way with those heaters.
Gotcha. Okay, so very good advice there. Make sure there's a vacuum cleaned out, especially if you start smelling that burning dust. Make sure that's clean.
That's always a sign that something's going on.
Yeah. Okay, great. What's another good one?
We're getting ready to change times here. We're getting towards Halloween, and, we set the clocks. And here's the thing. We always talk about the smoke detectors and smoke alarms at that time, but really go through and take some time, check the dates on your smoke alarms, because those last for 10 years, and after 10 years, they're due to be replaced. So if you've got a 10-year-old house, probably time to change those things out and put some new fresh ones in there. So make sure you do that. And of course, dispose of those things correctly. A lot of places that sell them have places where you can go in and then get rid of them because they do have a little bit of radiation in them. So no sense throwing those in a incinerator or throwing them in the trash when you can dispose of them correctly.
That's, also good advice to make sure that you're not throwing those in there. So 10 years, change it out.
You got it. And they have a date on the inside, which is really cool. So when you pop them off, they've got a date on the inside. And so if you're close to that 10 years, just put some new ones in there. Now, here's a little tip for those. If you've got some up in a place that you can't reach, or maybe you don't have the ability to do that, many times if you call your local fire department, and not calling 911, but get a hold of their non-emergency number or get a hold of the station, many times when they have a break, they'll come out and do that for you. Free of charge. They'll come out and do it as a public service if you don't have the ability to do it or can't hire somebody to come do it for you.
Wow, that's great. So that's an awesome thing to know. So just call your department and see what they say.
See what they say. A lot of times they'll come out and help you out with that when they have time to do it. So that's a good one right there. Now, the next one I think is really big is kitchen fires, because so many times we have a stovetop fire. Maybe you're frying something and something gets overheated, or maybe you're just not paying attention to that. So that's a big one right there. So first off, always use your range hood that's venting outside. That should always be venting outside. So use that just to keep the smoke and all the chemicals and stuff that come off your cooking food. And yes, there are chemicals and things like that come off your food when you cook, but you want to always get that going, and it takes the humidity down in your house anyway. But keep that thing clean. And then, of course, really, if you're cooking and you got something on the stove, be standing there and watch it. So kind of that rule of watching it while you're frying it, and you usually be good. But if you've got oil on the stove, the last thing you want to do is have water to put on there. So maybe the good lid will help you get that on there. If you've got a lid for that pan and you've got an oven mitt, sometimes you can get that on there and put the fire out by just choking it out with the lid.
Yeah, that's terrifying too, of when that's happening, of what to do there and how easily that could spread and be wrong. So great advice. Throw the lid on. Throw the lid.
Yeah, and then in your kitchen, have a fire extinguisher someplace. And don't put it next to the stove, because if you've got it right next to the stove and you've got a fire and it's hard to get at it, maybe put it over there in the other side of the kitchen so you can get it and take it to where the fire is. If you put it right next to the stove, you could have something where it's a little bit big and you can't get close enough to get at it. So make sure you got a good working fire extinguisher there.
Good things to think about, and to make sure you have one there. All right, any other good ones?
Fireplaces. Make sure that if you've got a woodworking fireplace, have that chimney sweep come out at least once a year. If you're heating your house with it, probably twice a year. But make sure that that's in good shape. And the older the fireplace, the more it probably needs to be watched, because if you get that creosote build up there, the last thing you need is a chimney fire. And those chimney fires, and you don't just go put the creosote killing log in there. Make sure somebody's out there and inspecting it. All it takes is a crack up there, and all of a sudden you can have a fire, and that's a big mess to clean up at that point, and that could go really badly.
Oh, real bad, real quick too. If you set your chimney on fire, there's a crack in there. Yeah, that could cause a lot of problems. So yeah, make sure, especially right now when it's getting to be, it's starting to get colder here. Have that checked out.
And the other thing, one last thing to think about here too is egress, in bedrooms and stuff. Can everybody in the house get out of their windows, right? So, interesting story. I was over at my kid's house, over their new apartment, and I went in it, brand new building. Won't throw anybody under the bus here, but I went to go open the window to one of the bedrooms, and the railing hits it. So they never had a final inspection. So if there was a fire, they couldn't get out. So make sure all your windows are working correctly and that you can get out, and they're proper egress windows, meaning that a firefighter can get in through that window, that it's big enough. If you're down in a basement and you got a bedroom down there and it's got this little tiny window, that's not really a bedroom then. So make sure that if you've got to do that, maybe it's time for a little remodel project, and make sure that if there's a fire, there's that second exit out of that room.
That sounds like a code violation.
That was a big code violation. But so many older homes have, maybe attics that have little tiny windows on the end of the house, and they've got bedrooms up there. Just make sure that they've got the egress window in there. That way, that somebody can get in or out safely.
Good enough. Yep. All good things. And so make sure, people who are watching this, you can absolutely share this too with other people. So make sure that everybody knows, because everybody knows somebody who is dealing with at least one of those issues that you just mentioned, or needs to be aware of it and cognizant of it. Anything else, or should we talk about around the house Northwest?
Well, one last thing for all you smokers out there, just be really careful. We see so many fires from couches, people falling asleep, that kind of stuff. And candles, the same thing. There's so many great battery candles out there. If you're going to do a candle, make sure you're doing it where you're keeping an eye on it, and don't go to bed with that candle sitting there someplace, because so many times we see drapes or other things catch on fire just because of a little bit of carelessness, and that can go very badly.
Yep. Or if you have a pet around that could knock that thing off, or knock it onto the ground, all kinds of
cat jumping around. Who knows what could happen, right?
Yep, dogtail. I mean, there's a lot. So
absolutely,
all great advice. Great advice, Eric. So everybody, pay attention to those. But let's talk about this weekend. Let's talk about Around the House Northwest.
Oh man, we got a lot coming up. We have a Made in Northwest where we went out and found Best Manufacturing. They're the only maker of kitchen whisks in the U.S., and they're right here in Portland. So we go out and watch them build Made in America kitchen whisks, the only ones made in the U.S.
That is such an odd thing. I mean, that's really cool, but like, what a random thing. And they're the only manufacturer in the U.S. Nobody else makes kitchen whisks.
Nope. And there's an art to it. I was really surprised how cool it was. We were out there at a family-run company. The family's running it, second generation, and the third generation's in there working right now. So it's really a really cool family, and it's high quality stuff. So it's really neat.
That's awesome. So that's just part of it. That's part of the Made in Northwest, which that entire series of all those things you go to are
one little
amazing.
Piece of the whole puzzle, right?
Piece. What are a couple other ones that you can tell us about?
Oh man, my building project, which is a Perform Like a Pro. I jumped on Amazon and bought a waterproof shade sail, basically, and I install that over one of my little decks that comes off our master to see if I can keep the rain off it this year and be able to actually use that space. So gave it a good test out, and show you how to mount one of those up, and for a few $100 you could have an area outside of your house there that doesn't have the rain falling on it without having to build a big cover.
Nice. That's yeah. I mean, that's another great piece to the show, but as you mentioned, there's so many parts to it.
Yeah, and then the other one, we went out to have a great visit with Dr. Gass from SawStop. Now, SawStop is a table saw manufacturer. They're located right here in Tualatin. They were invented here in Tualatin, actually. And it is the safe table saw where the blade spinning, as soon as it notices skin touching it within a thousandth or two of a second, the blade jams into a metal blade and disappears off the top. So you really don't have the thousands of people that get hurt from table saw accidents a year. If you use one of those, they do a test with a hot dog, basically, and as soon as it touches the blade goes away and keeps you from getting hurt with the table saw. So nothing a little tiny Band-Aid couldn't fix as a worst case scenario. So with that saw, people are not losing fingers and hands with that stuff anymore. So it's a really safe tool. We talked with the inventor about it.
That's amazing. I was wondering, that was my first question, was how do they test that out? I hope nobody's just, dropping their finger on there. But so yeah, hot dog, that makes sense.
Did for television. He did not for our show, but he did it. And I
even knowing it's safe, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, he did it. I was impressed, but he did that a bunch of years ago. But now they just use hot dogs, and that way nobody gets a nick on it. But literally, it's just a tiny nick on the side of the hot dog. And I did a segment on this thing about 6 or 7 years ago for Morgan Day, Oregon, back in the day. And it's a big bang when it takes about 1,000 pounds of force to stop a spinning table saw blade in a couple thousandths of a second. But it works well, and it's a tried and true method of stopping people from getting hurt while woodworking.
That's amazing. And again, all those things that you just mentioned, all on this episode of Around the House Northwest. And I'm sure there's more too. I don't know if you want to give away more or.
We'll give away one more. We talk about fall lawn care tips and stuff with our friends over at Wilco. I visit my buddy Craig over there, so we go over there and talk about taking care of the lawn. What do you fertilize? What do you do to stop the moss from growing on your roof this time of year? So a lot of preventative tips right at the end of the show.
I will watch that. Moss is my enemy, so I will definitely want to hear some of those tips and tricks. Well, that's again all just part of this week's episode of Around the House Northwest. And as always, let's tell everybody where and how they can watch.
You got it. So brand new show airs 10 a.m. Fox 12 Plus on Saturday, and then Sunday night at 6 p.m. and then Friday morning at 8 a.m. And for instance, tomorrow you'll be able to watch last Saturday's episode at 8 a.m. So if you need to catch up on last weekend's show, you can catch it tomorrow morning.
All right, Eric, as always, thank you so much for all the great advice and the preview that everybody gets here of Around the House Northwest. And for everybody watching too, this is Fox 12 Now. Thanks for joining us. We're going to sign off here shortly, and then we should be back right about 2 p.m. to talk about the Astoria Film Festival, the International Film Festival. So we're going to discuss what's going on with that. It starts up this weekend. They're also going to be doing a whole tribute to Vampira. And if you don't know who Vampira is, we will explain that, but she was from Astoria. So we're going to discuss all of that too. So that's coming up here in just a little bit. So wherever you're watching, you can come right back and join us right there. But I think that's it for now. Eric, it's good to talk to you. Talk to you soon.
Sounds good, brother.
And talk to everybody else here in just a little bit.